We often sugarcoat excuses and call it grace. It's not grace, they're excuses. But I have seen women use grace to the point of stagnation. And I've also witnessed a lot of women use grit to the point of self-destruction. So living on either end of the spectrum, not such a healthy place. Devotion to me is the sweet spot in the center. Grace is, I know your worth, I see your worth. You are worthy just for being alive, and you deserve self-respect. And self-respect often looks like feet to the fire and doing the work.
Welcome to the Powerhouse Podcast for founders and leaders, scaling smart and thriving without burnout. I'm Nicholle Overcamp. Stay with me here and let's get better together.
Hello, my powerhouses. If you are feeling that midlife bullshit, this guest is for you. I have with me today Courtney Townley, and she is a total badass. Love everything that she stands for. Between health and self-leadership, she is a coach and author, a speaker, and the host of a top-rated podcast, Grit and Grace, which I will say I love. They're super short, little powerful clips, so you have no excuse not to listen to it when you can get some really cool, tangible takeaways in 4 minutes, 7 minutes. So I love that. And she has spent more than 3 decades helping midlife women cut through the noise of the wellness culture, build confidence, consistency, and self-trust without overwhelm. Her work blends science, real-life application, and really just focusing on what she calls deep health, which I love, and not following someone else's manual, but just learning how to lead yourself. And I am sure that many of you listening, that really speaks to you. So Courtney, I am very excited to dive into all of this, and I'd love to hear how you got here.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I feel like I always say it's the proverbial onion, right? There's been so much learning, but then unlearning. And that's very humbling because, you spend a lot of time and money learning certain things. You dedicate a large chunk of your career to learning certain things. And then you sort of end up in this place of this ain't it. Oh, for lack of a better way to say it, but like I'm missing something. And so I feel like my career has been that trajectory of I came in the door through the wellness industry, through fitness.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was a professional dancer. And when I retired, it made a lot of sense that I teach people how to move.
Mm-hmm.
And that was awesome. Like I was psyched at, 24 years old, whatever I was, that I could actually make money teaching people how to move their bodies better. The problem was I realized pretty quickly that people didn't just want to learn how to move better. They wanted to feel better about themselves, about their lives. And there is so much more baked into that equation than exercise. And I was so uneducated. I knew nothing really other than movement. So I went on to get more education in nutrition, lifestyle change, behavior change science, how stress influences chemistry. And then I fell into the world of fat loss for about a decade. And that was a really successful era of my career. I helped a lot of people around the world lose a lot of weight. Most of my clients at that stage tended to be midlife women. I think because they were in a place where they could afford that kind of service. They were frustrated because hormones were changing. So they had gained a little bit of weight or a lot of weight. But what was so curious about that, this pattern that emerged, was I started to see that people would spend a really dedicated 6, 12, 18 months disciplined, following a list of rules and regulations. And then they would achieve their goal. And then they would start down the slippery slope back to where they started. And I was like, hang on a second, why is this happening? Right? Like they put so much energy into doing this, and now they're basically reversing all of that success. So obviously I was missing more. So I went on to learn about the nervous system and how it affects our physiology. I started to learn about our emotional capacity and what avoiding emotion actually costs us. I started learning about mindset work. And it just got me to this place where I really started to take off these rose-colored glasses in the wellness industry. And I started to kind of see that, hang on a minute, we've been selling people these formulas, right? These cookie cutter protocols, this list of rules and regulations that if what worked for me should work for you. And that is not at all what my 30-year career has taught me. It is so nuanced. And I really believe in my core that health is really an exercise in becoming a leader, not in following the leader. And we're not having that conversation enough. So that's the work that I do now. I tell women that I basically teach skill sets to help them navigate a life of transformation, not create a one-time transformation. Because life is transformation, right? We're transforming all the time. Midlife is a major transformation. But if I'm just selling you this cookie cutter protocol, it may not at all be relevant to where you are now. And it certainly may not be relevant to what you need 5 or 10 years from now. So how do we start developing skill sets to lead ourselves better throughout our life in the health arena and beyond?
Yeah, I love that. And, it's so transferable to even what we teach and talk about in financial planning and wealth building. It's like, we can't have just a rigid structure or something that we follow or follow someone else's program for a fixed period of time, because as soon as that ends, everything goes to hell in a handbasket. And so it's like the commitment to unlearn what you've been doing and then find this new foundation that's healthy for you, right? That works for you, that you can do consistently. And I always talk about like, what are the little transformations that you're going to just do as lifestyle shifts forever and then mold with that. And so I'd love to hear too. And you talk a lot about, and I was reading this and it's so interesting that I just posted about it yesterday, about the personal integrity and self-trust, right? And what I was saying, Courtney, is like, man, like us women, we have all this integrity and we show up for everybody else and we do all of the things, and we would never ever not do what we say, right? For someone else. But then what we do is we tell ourselves, I'm going to feel better this year. I'm going to feel less exhausted. I want to get healthy. And we have a good intention, but our follow through sucks. So I would love for you to talk about that, especially, even in your background, the title of your book, The Consistency Code, tell me a little bit about how you kind of cracked the code on helping women with that specifically.
Yeah. So first of all, I think like going back to my fitness days, because I was really deep in the fitness industry for 20 years and then in the fat loss industry for a decade, and being in those spaces and places, I think what I really like now looking back, what I recognize people really were coming to me for wasn't weight loss. It wasn't fitness. It was because they were in integrity pain. And integrity pain is a term that I use all the time in my work. It's basically that internal friction and dissatisfaction that we feel when we're living our life out of alignment with what we actually want. So women constantly putting themselves on the back burner, right? Or saying, I'll do it after tax season. I'll do it after the kids go back to school. I'll do it after the holidays. And I would also say that we kind of use this verbiage like that I don't know what to do, or I need someone to tell me what to do. And in all the years that I've been coaching, I've never found that to be true. The women I work with know so much about what they could be doing to move the needle of progress. But the problem is exactly what you said. It's the follow through. They're not doing it. So why aren't they doing it? Well, number one, I would say it's just massively a self-trust issue. They don't trust themselves. They don't trust their own knowing. And so they're constantly outsourcing what they need to do and also outsourcing someone else to lead them to do it. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. Like for a period of time, that can be really helpful. But there comes a point where you have to take the reins in your own behavior without someone holding your hand all the time. So about a decade ago, I was having a just huge revelation that, oh my gosh, I cannot stay in the space of fat loss and fitness because I just really feel like we're missing the deeper conversation, which is that health is multifaceted. Health is a direction, not a destination. Health is really liking who you are, what you do, and why you do the things that you do. And so those were the conversations I wanted to have. Now, at that time, I moved my business online. And I was working with a business coach because I knew nothing about the online space. And oh man, that's like the Wild West. And I remember her saying to me, I can tell, Courtney, you're frustrated because you don't want to sell what everyone else is selling because you don't believe in it. But I need to get clear on the conversations you really want to be having with women. So I want you to go away for the weekend and I want you to think about if you could teach a woman only 4 things to help her navigate her way through the health industry or the health arena better, what 4 skills would you want to teach? And that's where the consistency code was born, because the 4 skills were self-awareness, staying radically honest with yourself about what you're doing and why you're doing it. The second practice is the practice of organization. If you don't like having good intention, that's nice, but it doesn't change lives. We have to organize ourselves in a way that makes it easy for our brain to say, yeah, let's do that. So I work a lot on helping my clients to honestly kind of minimize how much they're committing to, which is really hard for ambitious women, but they often tend to be more successful. And then there's a whole camp of practices in the practice of follow through, because that's probably where I do most of my coaching. Women have the plan, they have the self-awareness, and then they're not doing the thing that they promised they would do. And so why is that? And I would argue it comes down to a few things. They have wildly dysregulated nervous systems. So they are just paralyzed to take action. They are unwilling to feel difficult things like not being really good at something or being just uncomfortable in general. I think we really shy away from that, especially as adults. And then the third thing is really learning how to parent our brain, because most of the women I work with have horrendous self-narrative when it comes to their body and when it comes to their capacity to show up for themselves or to, I don't know, do new things. And so there's a lot of work in helping them to change that self-narrative, because you're always going to behave in accordance to your beliefs. So if you believe you're not an athlete or you believe you're never going to be good with food, guess what? You're going to prove that to be true. So we got to shift that. And then the final bucket of practices is the practice of realignment, because consistency, no one is consistent all the time, right? Life happens. And a lot of curveballs get thrown, a lot of unexpected things arise, and we get a little bit or very lost in the woods with our own self-care. It happens to all of us. But realignment is really the practice that if we can master realignment, we can master the return, the resuming, the re-engagement. We keep showing up for ourselves for as long as we have breath in our lungs. And that's the name of the game. It's not about doing it perfectly. It's asking that question, am I still traveling in the direction of health? And if the answer is no, okay, no big deal. What's the next decision we can make to bump us back in alignment? Kind of like if you're going to the grocery store today and you get a little bit just lost, you take a wrong street, you don't pull over and pitch a fit for the next 6 months. You just kind of reorient yourself, you take a turn, and lo and behold, you get to the grocery store. Why we don't do that with behavior change boggles my mind, because it really can be that simple.
I mean, well, aren't we famous for overcomplicating everything, you know, and overanalyzing? And it's so true. My gosh, it's like, you know, and it's so funny to me too. I think I talk about it all the time, whether you mess up your spend plan, right? Or you mess up your diet and all of a sudden our brain goes, fuck it, I'm not going to do this anymore. And then weeks, months go by that we go back to old habits. We feel like garbage when the thing before felt good, right? It felt really good, but we give up on ourselves like that. And it's like, we're going to mess up. It's okay. Like, it is okay to have a bad day, a bad moment, whatever, but to like get back on the horse, have that positive progress, because that's the thing that makes you feel good. And why is it that we are so easy to give up on? You know, it's almost like we're sending this signal that we're not worthy. And shoot, like, don't get me wrong. I mean, it took me a very long time and a lot of pain to get to the point where I know I'm worth the effort, to accept that I'm not going to have like this perfect line, but I'm always going to be moving forward, right? Because I know what it feels like. And so the good side of that, right? To put in the effort and the hard work. And I think as a society, you know, and I don't know if you agree with this, Courtney, we've gotten so soft and so used to being comfortable all the time that we fail to recognize how painful that comfort is and how we're just like being complacent with feeling sick or not thriving. It's almost like this culture, even in medical, right? Where, you know, it's like, oh, well, we'll just, you know, make you feel okay. We're going to treat the symptom, but we're not going to fix the problem. And I think that's kind of rippled into our lives. And I am such a maximist. Is that a word?
Maximus. No, we can make it a word.
I'm a Maximus, right? Like fuck that. No, like life is short. I want to thrive. I want to do all the things. I want to feel really great. And so, you know, is there a point in your life, Courtney, where, you know, and you said in the beginning, like you've done this learning and had these mistakes, like what was your pivot point to kind of own, like, wait a minute? Because usually it's something that happens with ourselves in our lives. And then we're like, you know, we go through the thing and then we want to teach the thing. So, you know, what was that for you?
Before I go there's so much I want to say about what you just said. There's so much goodness in there. First of all, I don't know if you've ever read the book Comfort Crisis by Michael.
Yes,
That's
actually, I love
that.
That
is like, I mean, of course, like that. If your listeners have not read that book, I highly recommend it, because I think it is just such a powerful, it advocates for getting uncomfortable, right? And the power and the health that is behind getting uncomfortable. So if someone needs a little kick in the pants, that's a great book to read. The other thing I wanted to share was that I always use this analogy with my clients that I think is really helpful, because I'm a very visual person. I think of alignment like a campfire. I live in Montana, so we do lots of campfires. And starting a campfire is a lot of work because you've got to create the ring so the fire stays in the pit. You've got to go find dry wood. You've got to get little pieces. You've got to, get the wind just right. You've got to light the match. It's an effort. But once the fire is lit, all you have to do is throw in a log every once in a while. So when you see the flame dying, you chuck in a log. Behavior change, living life in a way that you're thriving is the same way. When you start to see the light going down, it is far more useful for you to do something to get the fire raging again versus waiting months, years, or decades, letting the fire die all the way down. And then you got to do all that work again, right? Of starting the fire. So I really encourage my clients to think of the practice of realignment as just a daily practice, like noticing in your life, where are you feeling a little misaligned? And what's one thing we can do today just to kind of push us back in the right direction? Because if we can do that, we're not going to have our fire die all the way down. That's the name of the game. So,
and I love that you said that just one thing too, by the way, because I think sometimes we think that to have this great life, all of a sudden we have to change 10 things overnight and hit every single routine and do, the sauna, the cold plunge, the red light. Like, no. Like just pick one little thing to move the needle and build on that. And I think sometimes, and I believe you even talk about this, Courtney, like that's where we miss the mark and feel overwhelmed because we're bombarded by all of these ridiculous influencers telling us what we should do versus just like hitting the pause button and saying what does feel aligned? Like what will keep my fire lit just enough to build on it, because life is really hard and we deserve that moment to build on.
Well, and this is a great segue into your other question of like, what was the pivotal moment for me?
Yeah.
So I was deep in the fat loss industry. I was starting to recognize this pattern in my clients that they're kind of backsliding back to where they started after they put in all this effort. And that was the same time that I became a mother. So I was 34 years old, had my son, and as people do, people came over to my home to see my child. And the comment from everybody was, oh my gosh, Courtney, you lost the baby weight so fast. You look great. Now, meanwhile, I was totally imploding. I'd had a really tough childbirth. So I'd had a blood transfusion and I was just feeling like completely disassociated with my body. I was not a natural mother. Like motherhood, I always say I entered like a tsunami. I mean, I just have no idea what I was doing. It was really emotionally and physically and mentally taxing. But nobody was asking me about that. It was just that I looked good. And I'm always embarrassed to admit this, but I will always tell where I made mistakes. I think for a lot of years, I was very successful as a trainer because I looked the part. I had a rockin' body and I'd been a dancer. And so people looked at me and they just associated that with health. Meanwhile, I had horrible joint pain. I had horrible PMS. I didn't sleep through the night. I was super reactive. I was not healthy. And I have worked with so many clients over the years who are amazing athletes, who look super hot in a bikini, like the things that we visually associate with health, and they were so not healthy. And so I think that was a reckoning for me of working with this population of women where I could see the problem was so much bigger than the weight on their bodies. And then also transitioning into this really epic role of motherhood. And the way that people were talking about my body, I was like, okay, we have this so wrong. Like we can't, like I cannot keep being a part of this conversation. I want to talk about what health really is, right? That deep health that I'm so passionate about is recognizing, okay, physical health is one component of health, but think about what influences physical health. Mental health, emotional health, relationship health, environmental health, spiritual health, your sense of purpose. We know that how you think about your life and how you manage stress directly influences the integrity of your cellular structure. There's a whole field of science on this. It's called psychoneuroimmunology. And so I always say to my clients, I don't really care how much you're going to the gym or what you're eating. I care more about why you're doing those things. I care about how much you like yourself and you like your life, because those are nutrients that matter just as much as diet and exercise. And please don't hear me saying diet and exercise aren't important. Of course they are. But dear God, we've been beating that drum for a really long time. And women are, I think, rumbling more than they ever have, especially midlife. I have such a heart for this community because At midlife, we are typically contending with the most stress we've ever had, right?
Mhm.
The height of our careers. We're trying to get, our kids grown and flown. We're starting to take care of aging parents. Our bodies are starting to do funky things, right? We're worried about retirement. I mean, there's just a lot on our plate. Well, the two hormones that really help us to manage cortisol, the stress hormone, are estrogen and progesterone. So they're starting to leave the party. And so we're kind of in this place of like having more stress than we've ever had with the least amount of hormones we've ever had to help us manage that stress. So your only option, I always say the equation we've been sold, at least my generation was sold, and I think a lot of generations prior, were sold the equation, exercise more, eat less. But I want to offer that the equation for deep health is to remove unnecessary stress from your life, figure out where those places and spaces are. And people might ask, well, what's unnecessary stress? Well, it's your self-narrative. It's your lack of boundaries. It is staying up late to watch the 20th episode of your favorite Netflix show. Those are unnecessary stressors. The more we remove those, the more resilience we have. But the other part of the equation is we have to be really honest with ourselves about where we need to lean into stress on purpose. Might you need to start strength training? Do you need to work with a nutritionist and improve your diet? Do you need to go to marriage counseling to improve your relationship with your husband? I don't know, but I know that the things that you need to do to make yourself more resilient are very different than what I need to do.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to sell you. I'm not going to tell you what I eat in a day. I'm not going to share my morning routine. Those are not things that I do because it's not helpful. What's helpful is helping women get to really the core of what they need and what they're missing. And let's start cultivating that.
Yes. And you know what I think it is too, is like, it's easy to say, what are you eating? It's easy to look at someone's body and say, you're so fit, you're so thin. I want to look at like that. Those are the easy things to have conversations about and look at. But what's really hard is to say, I hate being a parent right now. I hate the way my body feels. I don't recognize myself. I want to murder my husband. Like, I mean, those are hard things to talk about. And you might love your husband, but your hormones are telling you like you're mad, right? And maybe that's just me, but like, I mean, there are weird things going on right now, and that's hard. That is hard to crack open that can of worms, if you will, and sit with yourself and get real and talk about the messiness that I think us who tend to be type A overachievers want to stuff in this neat little package, right?
Totally.
We want to appear that we have it all together and we're doing all the things and we're checking the boxes, and we are so afraid, and at least I was at one point in my life too, like I was so afraid of like unraveling, like, oh my God, like if I crack this little thing open, woo, might be a landslide, right? And I don't know where that's going to end. And I don't know where that's going to go. And then is everyone going to judge me and think that I am this like train wreck of a human when I'm just trying to figure out how to get through the day, right?
Yeah.
And keep it all together. And so I think, and fortunately, I think there is a little bit of a revelation happening right now where midlife women, of course, middle age, we're finally starting to talk about this. I don't know as though we're being as honest with ourselves and putting in the work quite yet, but at least we're talking about more.
I mean, yeah,
more than we used to, and getting real with that part, but it's vulnerable. It's hard. And if we don't start talking about it more, we're not giving other women permission to do the same, I think, where they still feel they have to have this neat little image or say they're doing the things, but with the lack in action, you're going to feel this perpetual cycle of not feeling like you're ever matching up to who you say you want to be. And there goes your integrity misalignment, right? And all those things, like this constant battle if you don't just accept, hey, I got to do some hard shit.
Yeah, 1,000%. And I do agree that, I always say I am so happy to be alive at this time because we are having these conversations and there are all these resources at our disposal. However, midlife is a great place to fearmonger. And I see it everywhere. I see it with HRT. I see it with all these supplements and protocols promising that this is the one solution because midlife is so hard. And it's like, okay, but it's not one thing. And this is the hard part. It's not one thing that's like robbing you of your resilience. It's a lot of things. And I'm going to share this image because I think, again, I'm image oriented and I think a lot of people are. So I like visuals, but I think of stress like a bucket, right? We have a bucket of stress and we can only fit so much in the bucket. Now, what adds to the bucket are all the things I mentioned earlier. What are you eating? How much or little are you moving? Your sleep cycle, your relationship quality, your time in nature or lack thereof, right? There's so many ways that our stress bucket gets filled. Now, the more that stress bucket fills, eventually it starts to overflow and make a mess, and shit really starts to break down. But here's the other part for midlife women. It's not just what's in our bucket. The bucket itself is also starting to lose integrity, which is our cellular structure, because that's what aging is. Aging is a natural decline of cellular integrity. So if we are not doing what we can to fortify cellular integrity, our bucket kind of gets flimsy, but more and more stress is just coming in. So you can see like how insane that is to keep living that life that way. So I have such a heart for the challenge of midlife. I do think we're having better conversations about it, but I think you're right. It's still very easy to make the body the scapegoat. So the thing that's blamed for everything in our life. And I've worked with I talk about these clients a lot in my book, with their permission, of course, but I see this tendency to really focus on the weight of your body being the problem, when in actuality, it's the weight of your life.
Yes. Yeah.
So clients, it's really normal for them to start working with me hyper-focused on losing weight. And then, we start to build the know, like, and trust factor. And it starts to become so clear that, oh, you're using this as a distraction from this. So let's talk about that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that, it even goes back to like your, what you had said a little bit earlier is like, why do you want to lose weight? Like, what is the thing, and kind of like accepting all of that, because like, and I'll go back to like being a wealthy person, right? Like there's all of these facts from like how you feel, how you love yourself, how you push yourself to do hard things. Like that is okay. I think, and then of course, like financially and all the others, but like we've also, I see this happen sometimes where, and I love my clients to death. And I am also, I'm so comfortable with calling them out because I know that they're capable of so much more. And fortunately, I'm so glad we have that relationship, but sometimes it's like, oh, okay, like where are you giving yourself too much grace, and you're like using it as this subtle excuse to not do the thing that you need to do, because self-love is tough love sometimes. And that means you have to put in hard work. It doesn't mean that you can just like say, I'm giving myself grace, I'm letting this go, I'm skipping X, Y, and Z things, because you're perpetuating your own problem. And I think we have to better understand the fine line there. And, I think, Courtney, that's where experts are so helpful, whether it's a coach, a therapist, an advisor, whoever, to kind of help pull you out of that when we need it. We also, I think, are afraid to ask for that help sometimes, because it is vulnerable, and I've learned like the older that I have become, for asking for help, it's wisdom.
Of course.
And it is such a shortcut to so many other things to leverage that. And like, we are so much stronger together. And if you're hyper independent and trying to do all the things on your own, like I want everyone listening to remember, like that's garbage, total garbage at this stage in the game too, like with all the change, and internally, externally, like we need to rely on each other and people who have been there, done that, figured out the shit, or at least they're in that and coming out of it, where, and you've got your formulas and all the things, like that's where we need it most, and raising our hand,
I sound like a broken record because my clients hear me say this all the time, but I truly believe healing of any kind is a team sport. So although I'm a huge proponent of self-leadership, I think that we all have to develop self-leadership. It doesn't mean going it alone. It means having the discernment and the humbleness to ask for help where you need it, because you really want this thing so much. So I think that people who are really serious about success are the ones who are more likely to reach out for help. And back to what you said about just the grace piece, because we often sugarcoat excuses and call it grace. It's not grace, they're excuses. But I have seen women use grace to the point of stagnation. And I've also witnessed a lot of women use grit to the point of self-destruction. So living on either end of the spectrum, not such a healthy place, but I'm really passionate lately. In fact, our whole theme in my community this year is devotion, because devotion to me is the sweet spot in the center, right? It's saying grace is, I know your worth. I see your worth. You are worthy just for being alive, and you deserve self-respect. And self-respect often looks like feet to the fire and doing the work, right? So what
Right.
is the work that you are being called into to live your most expressed life? Because I believe that's what humans are here to do. It's just to be their full, unique expression, whatever that is for you. But you can't do that if you struggle to get out of bed, you hate yourself, and you're eating like a jerk, right?
Right.
It
Knock
is.
that off.
Like, are you devoted to your self-care? Can you be devoted to yourself rather than using words like, I don't have a problem with the word discipline, but a lot of people do, right? A lot of people are like, ooh, discipline, like that just sounds like so harsh. Okay, let's turn it into devotion because that's what it is. Devotion means that you're going to show up no matter how you feel because you care so much about the thing.
Yeah, I think it's the same thing as like accountability, right? Like people hate that word and it's like, well, like why? Why do we hate that word? Because like it's all in context and there is so much power to be accountable, and especially to yourself and to the people you like. And it doesn't have to be negative. But we have to have a level of extreme accountability and discipline to do anything great, to do anything good, to do anything worthy. We have to knock off the shit. And it sounds a little harsh maybe, but we're worth that, I think. I know we're worth that actually. It's just starting to believe that and how important you are as a woman and a person and leading your life. And when you're leading your life, that means you're asking for help and getting the support you need to take direction on the vision that you have. It's why leaders hire employees, right? It's the same concept to make sure that you've got that support to thrive.
Yeah. And to your point, right? Like we can hire all the people, the helpers and healers of the world, I call them. We can hire the helpers and the healers, most of which who are very skilled in a certain area. So it might be fitness, it might be nutrition, it might be finances, right? And we are trying to grow in that area. So we take that advice, but we also have to put it through the filter of our life and what we know to be true about ourselves right now. Because I can tell you, a lot of women will force themselves to eat and move a certain way because someone told them to, but they're only sleeping 4 hours a night. They haven't pooped in 2 weeks. They've got stress through the hilt. And you know what happens when, like, stress is a beautiful thing, but when it's administered on an already breaking down system, it becomes distress. So I think as individuals, we have to be able to become critical thinkers for the advice that we're getting. Does this make sense to my life right now? I'm really the only person who can answer that question because my coach, my trainer, my finance advisor, whoever it is, doesn't live with me 24/7. So it's both and, right? It's letting someone else outsource everything to you, but it's also not going it alone. It's like, where is that happy middle? And I think that's really what self-leadership helps us to find is that,
Yeah, I couldn't agree. Couldn't agree more. You got to take some ownership in this, guys, right? And some action. And so, all of what you shared, I think it's powerful. It's timely. It's so important, Courtney. And, for everyone listening, where can they start? Like, what would your takeaway be to say, hey, like after you listen to this, just do this one thing?
Yeah.
Would that be?
I always recommend the same thing, which it's so simple, but a lot of people won't do it because it's simple. But I'm telling you that it's a game changer, is define for yourself what health is. Because a lot of women have never stopped to do that. And so they're using borrowed beliefs. They're using what the industry tells them it is. They're using what their doctor tells them it is. But when I ask a client what health usually is, it's usually about being able to keep up with her grandkids. It's about being able to climb with her friends up a mountain. It's about staying as independent for as long as possible. And when you really get to the root of what health is for you, you feel devotion. But when you're focused on someone else's standards, that it's about having a bikini ready body, or it's about weighing a certain amount, or it's about a certain data point on your blood profiles at the doctor's office, it just feels flat. And then you need discipline because you just don't feel motivated.
Yeah.
So I think for every woman, I would challenge her to just really consider at this age and stage of life, not where you were 25 years ago, but for where you are right now, what does health really mean to you? And what does it allow you to do? Because when you get clarity around that, it gets a lot more exciting to pursue it.
I love that. Thank you so much. It's huge. Just, like anything else in defining success and what that means, like you have to own these definitions to get the fuel going.
Well, and in your field, I do want to share, because you'll think this is funny.
Yeah, of course.
Years ago, I think it's very normal in marriages for people to fight about money, right? You probably see this a lot. Yeah. So I was in a phase where my husband, like we had such a great marriage, but there was always this point of contention that I felt like he should be taking more responsibility and blah, blah, blah. And I was working with a therapist at the time. And she said to me, Courtney, what is enough? Like, what is enough money? And I was like, well, that's a weird question. I don't know. And she goes, well, until you know, you're always just going to be chasing. You'll never be satisfied because you have never clarified for yourself what enough actually is. And that translates across every dimension of our life. What does success mean? What does health mean? What is financially enough? And just that clarity, it's like, it gives you some relief. Like, okay, it's not an endless pursuit.
Totally. And I think we forget that those are all relative terms and we need to define it for ourselves. And we're so accustomed to looking at what the world tells us it should be.
Always.
And not asking ourselves that. And I have found it's such a relief to define it for yourself and follow that. Right? Because it is different for all of us. And so keep that in mind, you guys, is that you need to come up with your own definitions and then follow that. So you do feel that total alignment and congruency with everything you're doing. And then maybe discipline gets a lot easier because you're following the path that's true to you and not everybody else. And so, thank you. Thank you so much, Courtney, for everything you shared today. And for everyone listening, we are going to have the link to Courtney's book in the show notes because it has so much good stuff in there. And I know all of you love reading books. I definitely am going to dig into the rest of it. I got started on it. We'll have her Instagram handle here. And then any final message that you want to leave with everyone listening, Courtney?
Yeah, I think my final message would be just that you get this one big precious life, right? And you're here to cause and contribute and impact in certain ways. And the only way we can really do that work is if we take care of ourselves. And so self-care is not selfish. It is fundamental to all the places and spaces and all the people that you care about to show up there fully and in a way that you like. Self-care is it's a must. And it doesn't have to be hard. And it doesn't have to be someone else's rules and regulations. You just need some clarity and possibly some new skill sets, which is what the book is all about. It's just a book of skill sets that are really simple, very applicable, and probably very unlike any other diet or exercise information you've ever heard, because it's not a diet and exercise book. It's about really just guiding yourself to do the things that you want to be doing for yourself. And how do we do that?
And that's what I love most about a lot of your stuff is it like simple tools for real life.
Yeah.
It's not overcomplicated and you can just do it. It's just doing it, So I love that. So thank you. Thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it. And until next time, my powerhouses, continue to be courageous.